The views and opinions heard on this show do not necessarily reflect the views of the host.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Real Spiritual Talk Radio.
My breathing had stopped for so long that my heart actually ended up stopping.
He saw what I did and said that I was going to die.
And then I remember being gone. I wasn't there anymore.
I sort of lifted up about 6 feet above my body.
A pinprick of light appeared and came rushing toward me faster than the speed of light.
And then this light, all of a sudden it was all completely around me.
He says, I am God. Yes, I am real.
The main message was loving yourself and loving others.
It was clearly shown to me.
It was really hard to put into words. It felt like I had been there before.
It was just this very personal, impersonal, unconditional love.
Welcome to another edition of Real Spiritual Talk Radio. I am your host, Lamont Gates, once again bringing you the world of faith, metaphysicality, and spirituality. And as we wind down on our near-death experience accounts, today I welcome a guest who operated solely from the physicalist rational mind, only to have it replaced with the spiritual by the blink of an eye. Let's get it started. Ladies and gentlemen, joining me via telephone is out-of-body experiencer Moshe Ben-Avi. Moshe, welcome to Real Spiritual Talk Radio.
Thank you. Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. Now, I'm aware that you recently attempted to share your experience on a Facebook near-death experience group, but so far did not, correct?
Yes. Well, I have actually shared it in many Facebook groups just recently, more than I used to in the past. See, I have like stages of where I decide to talk a little bit more about that incident. And, because to be honest with you, I'm discovering more and more every day, and I'm investigating it myself. And more than near-death experience, I think that I had an outer-body experience.
Excellent. So why don't you first take us back to where religion and or spirituality began for you as a child, and we'll work our way up to that experience.
Okay, so I was born and raised in Israel, and I've been here 12 years in the United States. I'm a son of a Cohen. My mom is a Cohen, which is in Judaism they consider to be the high priest who worked in the temple. All my life I grew up as an Orthodox Jew, never really religious, never practicing. I was, to be honest, turned my back to God in many occasions in a way of I just lived a life of materialism, and, you know, I was never a skeptic, but I was just chose to ignore it and to be honest, let just life lead me, let temptation lead me. I never really paid too much importance on the spiritual.
Was there a clash with your family since you weren't a full practitioner of their faith?
My mom is the one who's more of the practicing Jew, but my parents are, I don't want to say secular, but they're not really ultra-Orthodox. They're not practicing too much besides the Sabbath and some high holidays. But other than that, they believe in God, they're spiritual, but they're not really strict. So they kind of let me do my own thing as I grew up to be a grown man.
Got you. So they mainly had a cultural relationship with religion aside from their belief systems.
Correct.
Okay, so why don't you take us into that out-of-body experience? Because what I did see posted on this near-death experience group you're a part of were a series of pictures showing a total, and I mean total car wreck. Tell us what propelled your experience.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, during those years, I was just got out of a divorce. My ex-wife, the mother of my kids, I divorced her. That's the reason I came to the United States. I was going through some sort of a crisis. I don't want to call it a midlife crisis, but it was some sort of like me trying to be young again, and I was kind of letting loose. I was working as a correctional officer at the time at the maximum security prison. So I was exposed to a lot of the agony, a lot of negativity that was there just because the place is like that. And so I used to go and work the night shift many hours, being mandated to overtime. And as a side job, I also taught martial arts. So I was really working most of the day and then sleep. If anything, I would sleep for like 4 or 5 hours a day and I would just go on and go on. So one of these days I came back, from the prison and the same road that I take to and from, my house. And it was about an hour and a half to commute to that prison from where I used to live. And coming back from work at 7 a.m., it was my day off. It was a Tuesday morning, and they could not mandate me to work overtime because it was my day off. So I was just driving, taking my van at the time, and driving on this very, very boring old country road. And I don't remember if I fell asleep for a split second or if something happened or if I was distracted. But all I remember after just driving, doing 70 miles an hour, the speed limit, my wheel locked, my brakes locked, like I had no control over the vehicle whatsoever. And I'm awake and I'm aware and I'm looking at the speed gauge, the odometer, and then all of a sudden it's like, the speed gauge. Yeah, it was going, instead of going down, it would go up. So the speed would increase instead of decreasing. And I could not brake. And I remember being awake and seeing myself heading into this utility pole at 85 miles an hour. And I knew, as a former police officer too, I've been in car accidents many times. I knew that this is something you not come out of. And if you do, you're not the same. And I remember that just seeing that moment of impact, like it's about to be an impact, I just wore a smile. I didn't have any fear. I don't know why. I wasn't even trying to protect myself. I was kind of like welcoming whatever's coming. And all I remember was that big bang, and then the airbag deployed, and then I don't remember anything. And right after that is where my experience started.
Yeah, and just looking at that wreck, it looks as if a bomb went off. Just a disastrous wreck all the way around. But why don't you tell us what happened after you blacked out?
Okay, so now we're getting into a point when the experience started, and then it ended, and then there was a conclusion part, which was huge. So I remember, like I said, I remember the accident heading towards that utility pole. I heard the boom, and then I wake up upside down. I knew exactly where I was, and I knew exactly why I was there. I knew what happened. I knew how it happened. So I know that I wasn't kind of out of it or unconscious or thinking like, I knew exactly what happened. And all I remember, I was upside down, and I was pinned in that car completely. It was the whole side of the car was on my right knee. And because I rolled over 5 times apparently, I ended up in that middle of that field, this cornfield. And I was buried, like my door was buried into the ground. But the second I opened my eyes, I felt the most amazing feeling I've ever had in my entire life. And a lot of the times people ask me to describe it, and I really can't, no matter how many words I'll use. It was as if the sound completely disappeared from this world. There was absolutely no sound. Actually, all my senses were gone besides my vision. The only sense that was still working and operating was my vision. I mean, my thoughts were empty. I didn't have any of my daily thoughts, any of my good thoughts or bad thoughts or worries. It was nothing. It was like it was formatted. And I couldn't smell anything, definitely couldn't feel anything. I just felt very, very comfortable. And now it's very ironic because here I am upside down, pinned down after a bad wreck. I don't even know if I'm okay, if I broke my back, if I didn't even think about that. I just thought of how nice of a feeling it is. And I remember trying to kick the door open to get out, and I was buried, and I'm like, okay, well, I can get out of here, but yet I don't feel anything. I don't hear anything. I can't smell, and I'm like, I don't realize it's like a dream state, but yet I'm awake. And all of a sudden through the car window, I saw this lady, just pacing by, back and forth on the field. like right next to me, about 10 foot away from me, and she's like pacing back and forth. And I couldn't talk to her because my window was rolled up and I was stuck up, obviously. So I'm waving with my hands for help. And I was trying to talk. I couldn't make any voice. All I had was my eyes, and I'm waving to her. Now she was wearing clothes that they were black, and it looked like it was from the 1800s. And I remember she had like fire burns on her face, especially on the right side of her cheek, like bad burns. And I told that lady I was waving my hands and I was asking for help pretty much with my hands. And she just waved at me no. And she kept on, she nodded her head no, and she kept on pacing back and forth, back and forth. And I remember that I didn't judge her. I didn't want to judge her. I was thinking, maybe she's just afraid to do more damage. Maybe she's afraid that the car's going to set on fire. Maybe she's not skilled to do anything. I just didn't think anything of it, besides that she didn't want to help. So I remember that after I got tired from trying to open the door, I closed my eyes, and it wasn't a split second before I opened them again. And it's almost like you just played a movie that you recently paused. Everything came back in life. It was like sound. I remember blood dripping from my forehead. I remember the car still being on, the radio playing. It smells terribly bad, like smoke and coolant and all that stuff in there. I'm just starting to feel the pressure of my body from that car. And I am, in a way, freaking out. And all of a sudden, this paramedic runs through the window and gives me an IV. And I remember asking him, why are you giving me an IV line? Just get me out of here. And he was like, I can't. We have to call the firefighters. And the firefighters came, and they used what they call the jaws of life, it's hydraulic system, to rip open the car and get me out. And I remember everything was just so fast, and everybody's yelling at me not to move. And here I am telling them that I'm okay. And they're convincing me that I'm not, and they're screaming at me not to move. And they gave me morphine to my stomach and cut my uniform open, and my badge was all over the place, gone. And then I just remember being taken into an ambulance, and there was a sheriff deputy sitting there writing a report. And the whole time they're being screamed at not to move. And I'm like, I'm okay, guys, I'm okay. So on the way to the hospital, I tell that officer, I said, officer, can I ask you a question, please? And she was like, sure. I was like, isn't it against the law for a citizen to not help another citizen in distress? And she was like, what are you talking about? I was like, well, that lady there, and she was like, we were the first in the scene. There was nobody there. You were out there in the middle of nowhere, and there was nobody, absolutely nobody. And I was like, to myself, I was like, well, I know I'm not losing it. I know what happened. I know what I felt. That's very strange. So I didn't understand what to think about it and what to do. And I remember going to the hospital in the ER, and they just gave me to a trauma room and scanned me everywhere, CT, MRI. And after an hour, the doctor comes to me and he's like, listen, sir, I've been here 25 years. I've never seen anything like that. And I was like, what do you mean? He was like, you don't even have a bruise. Like, I got out of this accident without having even a bruise, not even a sprained ankle, not even nothing. Nothing broken, nothing, everything was operating fine. In fact, I went to work 2 days after.
You did mention blood dripping from your forehead.
It was a little scratch. I had scratches, probably some glass on my hands, but it was nothing serious. I mean, there was nothing even that required a Band-Aid on it. I mean, but as far as my body, it was completely amazing. So I went back to sleep that night, and then this is where everything was just like revealing to me. Like I had a dream about the accident, and all of a sudden, within that time, I almost felt like I had all the secrets of creation. And I must say, I have to talk from a biblical perspective, because my experience was biblical. I felt that I was saved. All of a sudden, I realized things that I never even thought that existed in my brain about why we're born, what are we doing in this life, what's the purpose, what's after, what it feels like, do we really die?
Very interesting. Let's go back to this lady dressed in black from the 19th century. Did you describe to the deputy what she wore and what she looked like?
Yes, I said a woman. She has a headscarf. She was in black, and she was in me for the whole experience that I had. The feeling of, and again, I don't even know how to describe that comfort. I mean, how can you be comfortable when you just hit something 90 miles an hour, rolled over 5 times, completely crushed, and inside a car, and yet you feel like you don't want to leave that moment? And with that lady, it's like the communication was that I'm looking at her, she's looking at me, she didn't look very happy. She didn't look, I mean, she actually looked like mad, like she was mad, but she was just walking, pacing, and she was waiting for something, waiting for me to come out or waiting to take me and she wouldn't talk. And I'm like, just help. And it's like something made me just stay in that car like it wasn't my time. Because when I closed my eyes and opened them, I still realized what happened. I still remembered everything, but like my life came back, like my sensations, my thoughts, my stress, everything. Yeah, everything. So that was the weirdest thing in the world. And then I started investigating it more into a biblical aspect and more other people's experiences.
I know you mentioned that you had deep spiritual dreams. Can you describe what you meant by creation, purpose, and any information you received afterwards?
Do you have anything specific you want to know? Because it's like an ocean of knowledge.
Okay, let's start with this woman. Did you receive any particular information on who she may have been or what happened to her?
Because a lot of people tell me other things than what they think that lady is. The more and more I read about it, the more and more I get connected with the Bible, the more and more, to me personally, the pieces are coming together. See, when I said dreams and visions, it's not just like, I dream about something, I wake up. Even my significant other knows that I all of a sudden started knowing things before they happen. I start having a lot of trials in my own life that I have nothing to do with. Like, as people of free will, we can be in charge of our own destiny, depends on our decisions, but sometimes trials come our way and turbulences, like without us doing anything. It's like we're taking the back seat and just holding on. And a lot of that happened to me. And when it happened, all of a sudden it's just, you have those vision and those people that come into your life and just rescue you. And it's almost like, and it's not almost like it is. My conclusion is this world does have demons in it, does have angels in it, does have a lot of heavenly beings. But back to that lady, I totally believe that she was some sort of a heavenly being that was either supposed to take me or supposed to just be there waiting for me. And then it just wasn't my time. Or I was supposed to confront her and I was just saved.
And it's not uncommon at all in the near-death experience literature that people may begin to dream dreams that may align with the experience that they just had. Some may become more sensitive. Nature is seen more vibrantly, etc. So why don't you talk to us about what you learned concerning creation specifically?
Absolutely. And again, like I said, I have lots of respect to everybody's own personal faith, all of your listeners. And I'm not here to try to say that I'm right or other people's wrong, or people can believe in whatever they want. I'm just speaking my own personal story and my own personal belief after that story. I'll put it like this. Everything that's born is sentenced to die. And everything that dies, it really is sentenced to live. And if you think about it, we live in a world that is pretty much just a one big illusion. Nothing is really ours. Nothing really stays forever. Not even our close ones. And it's an individual journey of our soul, 70, 80, 90 years. In one hand, we have this wonderful life and this wonderful, most sophisticated mechanism on the face of the planet, which is our bodies and the universe that's here to serve us. And then we need to make choices after live this life. Now we can live this life of material and believe that there's nothing after. And then we realize we have a wake up call that there is a lot after. I tell people that tell me that we only live once. After my experience, I tell people, that say we only live once, so just have fun. We live all the time. We only die once.
So in other words, you've learned that we are eternal beings.
The soul is definitely eternal. Definitely. There's 3 partners of human beings' creation. I believe there's God and the parents. Everybody contribute their part. The parents give the physical body, God gives the soul. whenever this partnership is over, whenever in life, everybody gets their part back. And I believe that our soul is trapped in this earthly formed body, and that's why we can't see things that we're supposed to see. We're not elevated outside of our body enough to be able to really see. If we could see what's really around us, I think a lot of us wouldn't be able to sleep ever from fear.
Yeah, really, especially with your mention of both demonic and angelic entities that surround us invisibly. So talk to us about what you learned concerning human purpose.
Disconnect yourself, not you, like in general, the information is for over materialism, meaning we need what we need to serve us so we can, I believe, serve God and serve others. And I think the most important thing that I got was that in real life, you know, a lot of people accumulate either property, accumulate money, accumulate even education, anything earthly and physical that they think is going to serve them for their lifetime here. But by doing that, they're really not accumulating anything of matter that they really need when we depart from this world. This world is just a hallway towards a lounge, a way bigger eternal lounge. We are from the breath of God. And people need to realize that we are, in a way, part of God. The book of Genesis says that God breathes into our nostrils.
That's correct. Chapter 2, verse 7 to be exact. So I know you mentioned earlier about knowing things before they occur. Did you return with some sort of precognition, you believe?
Yes, that's exactly what I was telling you also in the beginning, when I know things before people say them. And in the beginning, it was kind of weird. And that my significant other told me that. Like, I didn't even realize that I was doing that, because I thought it was like, hey, you know, stop messing with me. And then more and more I became clairvoyant. And all of a sudden I saw that I'm inspiring a lot of people that I don't even know without even trying to inspire them. I don't know if it makes any sense. Like, a lot of people reach to me with problems and with questions, and all of a sudden just things, I don't look at things the way I used to look at them before. And this is what made me also wanted to tell my story here in other places, because I now feel that what was an experience to me is now turning to be a calling, turning to be telling people, hey, you know, yes, there is God. Hey, it's not the end. If people think that we just, all this beautiful life is there just for a 70, 80-year purpose and that's it, they're totally wrong. And spirits out there and souls are out there, and there's bad ones in there too. There's angels. All these things are true.
Now, let me ask, I know your family was a part of the Jewish religious tradition. Did you ever go back to them and describe your experience to them? And if so, what was their reaction to it?
And that was my main thing. That's how people know me. All my life, I was the guy who just, you know, made common sense. I was in the military. I was a correctional officer. Like I said, I was always the guy who's like very common, very common sense, very logical. And you couldn't tell me, like, if back in the day you told me stories like that, I'll probably just maybe smile at you a little bit, maybe kind of like, hey, I don't know about that. But now all of a sudden it's just, I'm completely a different person. And I know the purpose. And I know that I feel like I need to save as many people as I can. So when I talked to my parents about that, my mom and dad, my mom especially, were understanding. She was like, yeah, she automatically said that, oh, God saves you. Everybody who sees the pictures of the accident, because, you know, it's not like I tell a story that might happen or might not. Like, I have the proofs. And when I show it to people, it's like, well, you were saved. It's a miracle. It's a miracle. I was like, yeah, I was saved. You know, I'm reading this new book right now, which pretty much tells the whole secret of creation, but it's not really part of the Bible, even though it should be.
What book are you referring to, just for clarity?
It's in Hebrew. It's a book of Enoch, which I don't know how to say it in English. I think it's Enoch, which is pretty much 7 generations from first man, from Adam and Eve. And he's, according to the book, it was part of the Dead Sea Scrolls, if you're familiar with them.
That's Enoch, the book of Enoch in English.
Yeah. And some of the findings there in the later chapters, talk about very, very familiar feelings than what I had when I had my car accident.
So this ancient text aligns with your experience, you'd say?
Yes, very, very much so. And I was not familiar with this text up until recently at all.
Well, I'll let you in on something. This book is actually quoted in the New Testament portion of the Bible as an epistle by Jude, who was a supposed brother of Jesus. He actually quotes the first chapter of Enoch, which lets us know that this text was indeed being circulated in the first century in Israel.
Yeah, and for some reason it was also kind of, how to put it, being labeled as for some as an evil book, for some as a non-true, for some. But that book talks about a lot of things and a lot of secrets and a lot of facts that we didn't know, because these are pre-biblical times. You're talking about before the Bible, or the early days of creations, and the vision that he had going pretty much to heaven and seeing what he seen while he was alive, and then reading some of the text, and I'm like, wow. I mean, I have had the same feelings, and I had goosebumps all over just reading that book.
It certainly is a controversial book. For some, it's outside of biblical canon and cannot be accepted, and for others, it's apocrypha, as in hidden, especially for its hidden mystical elements. Is there anything you'd like to share with others about life and spirituality after this experience?
That one of the things that I take with me after the accident is that in life, there's two things that we can't control. It's the dates that we are born and who we are born to, obviously, and when we die. And a lot of people got to remember that, because we are constantly in a physical body feeling, all of us, we never think about death. Yes, we think about that we live forever. We never tend to think about what if, unless a trauma comes, and unless you're in a situation when your loved ones are in the ICU and you're praying for every month that you're going to spend extra with them. All of a sudden, money means nothing to you. All of a sudden, your position or your job or your career means nothing to you. And I want to tell people that one of the things about creation is don't wait for that moment to happen in order to wake up and realize that, yeah, there are miracles and God is real, and there are things that are more of the soul than they are for the body. We have to learn how to elevate our souls and almost live a heavenly life in this world. Otherwise, we will be set for failure with temptation.
Moshe, I thank you for sharing your experience with us. Very enlightening information.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Moshe Ben-Avi. And that's going to do it once again on this episode of Real Spiritual Talk Radio. Continue tuning in, ladies and gentlemen, as I am winding down, and I'm going to shift gears very shortly into a new topic of spiritual interests. But I still hope and pray that you are currently enjoying the broadcast and are becoming much more spiritually enlightened by it. And with that said, I am your host, Lamont Gates, and this is Real Spiritual Talk Radio, now signing off.